Chapter 13. The Yoga of Field and its Knower. About this chapter. This is a very important chapter to understand the core of non-dual or Advaita Vedanta philosophy in action. Arjuna has asked about the words kshetra and kshetrajna, which are the matter and spirit respectively. From this chapter we are reminded that a teaching, reading, or listening is knowledge. When it becomes one's own knowing, this becomes a knowledge that comes from oneself rather than anyone else. Remember that in the words tattvam asi, the tat means that, tvam means you, and asi means are. So that you are is the meaning. Not close to, not similar to, or maybe, or would like to be. You are. You always were, and you always will be, and will continue to be. This also means that even when you don't know you are, you still are. For clarity, think of asking a 2-year-old if he or she is human. They will not understand, but they still are that. The mind cannot understand at that age. As adults, we may not understand the that you are, but it is so. The knowing of that I am is not sufficient, as this is just learning the knowledge. Mere memorization of these words with understanding does not make the words an experienced reality for an individual. Remember that Krishna suggested that Arjuna unite his mind with higher consciousness through various means, but especially, easiest, from a love or devotion perspective. Arjuna has learned who he is as a man in the first 6 chapters, who the higher consciousness or God is through the next 6 chapters, and in the final 6 chapters, these are useful for him to understand Asi. And this is where Arjuna learns how to recognize his higher nature, which is no different than the Lord or higher consciousness that is also his best friend in this book. In Chapter 7, Arjuna had learned about higher consciousness, or the higher self, and lower self. The lower self is able to understand the concept, as described by Krishna, that the whole creation is composed of earth, water, fire, air, space, body, mind, intellect, and the ego. All of this is referred to as inert and insentient matter. This means they cannot do anything without something other than their inherent nature. To make something sentient, it needs the higher nature or spirit by which the world is sustained. Matter does not exist independently. Non-matter is spirit, or the self, or sentient being, or life, or Atman. The first verse of this particular Gita is not found in all of the Bhagavad Gita books. Arjuna's questions were added to this chapter for the reader to have understanding of why his questions arose. In this additional verse, Arjuna asks what is Prakriti and Purusha, what are Kshetra and Kshetrajna, what is Jnanam and Jnanam and Nayam. He said he would like to know these distinctions. Many would not ask such questions. Someone who understands the gap between what they know and what is new has curiosity about this gap. This is why Arjuna has asked. These questions ask about the lower and the higher natures, the difference between the known and the knower, and finally what is known and what is to be known. Remember, in our lifetimes, there is so much to be known that even if one specializes in a particular area, the vast expanse of the field is much greater than what one knows. Arjuna wants to know what he needs to know to be complete, and what are the means to know this. Krishna begins to answer in the order that will make the most sense to Arjuna based on where he is right now. He begins with the body, that this is of the nature of the lower self, because it is changing and subject to decay. We know that the body changes and ages. We all know the body was different 10 years ago, and it's different today. The one who knows this is the knower. Important to understand here is that body includes the external or physical or gross body, the subtle internal body, which includes the five senses, the thoughts, desires, attitudes, behavior, feelings, and emotions, which is the mind, intellect, and ego. And finally, the causal body, which is even more subtle and is composed of vasanas, where, quote, ignorance is seated, which is composed of breath, digestion, and all subtle functions maintaining life. All of these are changeable, objective, and known. The one who is the knower of that is consciousness. The teacher knows where the student is beginning and knows the goal too. He or she can see the journey ahead, especially if you are trying to reach him. Krishna is such a teacher, so he is able to know the inert and that which is not inert. He teaches Arjuna through this chapter that the body is that which gives a person protection as a shield from external possible dangers. Like withdrawing a hand from a fire, the subtle body also protects a person. Each of these are also subject to change and death eventually. Birth, growth, changes, decays, and death are the changes that happen in the gross, subtle, and causal layers of man. These are temporary identifications with the self. These are the field. The physical body is experiencing the result of karma from this life and previous lives too, through the gross, subtle, and causal layers, which are seen as blessings. Being a human is a blessing through the grace of the Lord, since in the human form only can one experience the union with the Lord. It is a field in which one's experience is happening. Remember that the first verse in the Gita talks about the battlefield that Arjuna is on. A field is where one reaps the results of one's actions. The subtle body is the means of experience, while the place of experience is the body. Remember that mind thinks of the thought of anything desirable, which leads to the action that allows the body or senses to enjoy the experience through the mind. The desires to have anything are due to deep impressions carried by vasanas and karma. These are the fields of experiences. In waking, we use the body and mind to experience. In sleep, the mind and body are the experiencers, and in deep sleep, the causal body is the experiencer. The one who knows this is the knower of the field. So now Arjuna is reminded that awareness is different from the gross, subtle, and causal bodies. Krishna declares that this awareness is him. The you that is Arjuna, he tells him, is the awareness too. And this awareness is the same in all beings. What Arjuna has been considering himself through I am this statements are all the matter or field versus the knower of the field, which is the awareness or knower. Kshetra is bodies. Kshetrajna is awareness. Nayam is what is to be known. All bodies are the matter and the subject to be known. The distinction between awareness and what is to be known is true knowledge. This is the distinction between the fields of knowledge of matter. Knowledge of the self, higher self, is true knowledge and is the same in all people. The specific fields of matter are these: the body made up of the five elements, which are earth, fire, water, air, and space in Vedic understanding, plus the mind identified as the ego, plus the intellect that is able to understand logic. All of these come from an unmanifest energy, which is not able to be seen but is understandable. There are the five senses of perception, five senses of action, and the mind. There are the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. There are the five organs of perception in speech, hands, feet, reproductive organs, and the anus. And the mind is the seat of the emotion. Combined, there are five elements, five senses, and five organs of perception. The eyes have a field of vision, the ears have a field of sound, the skin has the field of touch, the tongue has the field of taste, and the nose has the field of smell. These 5 fields are known as the objects of the senses that are the 5 elements: mind, intellect, unmanifest potential, and 11 sense organs and 5 objects of the senses. These are the 24 aspects of the field. Each is unique and one does not compete with any other. They do collectively and cohesively coexist. 3 major categories have been asked to be distinguished by Arjuna in this chapter, namely, between the matter and the soul, the field of experience and the experience, knowledge and what is to be known. Arjuna is asking from a sincere curiosity to know how to act in his steps forward. Krishna has explained that the body is the field for one's experiences. Now Krishna looks at the field of thoughts and emotions. For this, he shares that the mind is the field for emotions. The intellect is the field for opinions, judgments, and knowledge. So who is the one observing through the field? This is awareness or higher consciousness. The observer is contaminated from one's own likes or dislikes, prejudices, etc. So even while observing, one is being influenced by past experience and judgments. One can only move to the higher self in its observations when moving beyond such prejudices and judgments. Otherwise, he or she lives in the lower nature of the self. The lower self looks at things subjectively. The higher self looks objectively. The observed world of matter includes the 24 aspects mentioned earlier. Thoughts and emotions are also a field of experience, which includes our joy, success, gain, loss, love and hatred, jealousy, pride, etc. Krishna mentions he will only give a sampling of this field as it is quite vast. Based on our likes and dislikes, we experience our joys and sorrows. Remember that certain places, people, and experiences based on our likes or dislikes lead us to our experiences. In Vedanta, the world is understood as the combination of 5 elements and each having a sattvic, rajasic, or tamasic character. Our experiences then combine these based on which character is associated with whatever we do. Like eating a dessert might make someone happy normally, but one time while eating the dessert, if we have some news that is not easy, the mood of eating the dessert will change. The 3 characteristics are in the world, in our minds, and in our subtle impressions. This means the combination of 3 by 3 by 3 creates the variety of all. The matter, the moods of the individual, and the impressions, each having 3 qualities each, creates the experience in any moment. The reflection of consciousness allows any person to have any experience. This is the brilliance. This allows us to plan, think, and understand. Consciousness is the brilliance of the higher self in all. If matter reflecting pure consciousness is contaminated by the characteristics present in the lower self, which are based on past experience, it leads to agitations, confusions, bondage, and vulnerability. This is the state that most are living. The brilliance of the higher spirit, of the higher self, is obscured by the association with matter. Fortitude is the only aspect that allows one to move forward even with past experience. This is firmness and determination. The bottom line is that whatever is observed is matter. The observer is the higher consciousness, and for most, contamination of the higher self operates as the lower self. The uncontaminated is the true higher self. What makes a person move from the experience of the lower self versus the experience as the higher self is knowledge. Knowledge requires a process of purification to remove the contamination. When we would like to discover the higher consciousness within each, we need to remove the unwanted contamination. Most would think that they do not have time to do new actions, But Krishna is clear that this process is not something to do, but rather something to be. He now explains the 20 details that are not activities, but rather attitudes, the ways to think. This does not require any physical exertion like repeated mantras, pilgrimage, exercises. A person may take action to express the changed attitude, but it is not necessary. Imagine doing any action half-heartedly compared to doing an action with a full heart. The action is the same, that requires no extra exertion. Yet the experience is completely different for the giver and the receiver. The suggested values from Krishna are the same that any person would expect from the world for themselves, so they are easy to understand and appreciate. Important to remember here is that we expect the people in the world to treat us kindly because we value this energy. When we start doing such actions first, these become virtues. This removes the impurities of contamination to discover the higher self in ourselves. This is what Krishna says is true knowledge. Remember that there is no shortcut to perfection. Listening to lectures or reading books does not allow the knowledge to truly absorb into the individual. One needs to emulate the information gained to make the knowledge our own by one conscious practice. This is living the pure consciousness of true knowledge. The values or virtues are reflecting a change of attitude. The values or virtues are, number 1 is humility, amanitvam, not feeling better than others. This is not conducive to learning. Even if a person knows something, to gain more or different knowledge requires a readiness of a mind from the energy of humility. A dejected attitude or an inferiority complex is not humility. Such a mind can know something and wants to learn more. The mind that feels it can be better with more refining of the mind, that there is more to understand and more to know, having an eagerness to learn and grow with a healthy attitude. This can include a confidence of one's current knowledge with an open mind that wants to learn more. Humility is an expression of wisdom. Number 2 is no pretentiousness, adambhitvam. This is not giving a false face of oneself to the world. Often, respect is gained from pretentious behavior, which feeds the imaginary world of the individual. If someone bursts the bubble, a person will fight to hold on to it. Pulling out of a false notion of oneself is the key here. For example, when one says something untrue, they have divided themselves into two, the truth and the untruth. When there are two parts to anything, it opens up a conflict. At the outermost level is how one feels they need to behave in the world for how the world perceives oneself, lower self. The second level is about comparing or competing with others around, which makes one forget their real higher self. And the third layer is one's own lower self and the relationship with one's thoughts, ideas, likes or dislikes, which also makes one forget the real higher self. Number 3 is non-violence towards others, ahimsa. Not causing pain to others in words, actions, and even in one's own thoughts. This is important to remember here that this is towards all others. So a person, for example, may be vegetarian and may regularly insult those that are not. This is violence towards some. Other conscious or unconscious judgments also do not match this thinking, as they hurt others, whether the others know this or not. How we interact with others matters here. If we are thinking, speaking, or acting in any way that may hurt another, this is a violence too. Only an individual knows their own truth about their thoughts, words, and actions in this way. And it takes a mindful attention to recognize one's own patterns. Non-violence needs to be understood at even the subtle levels. Thoughts and words can injure the emotions of others. Number 4 is forgiveness or tolerance, which is santi. Tolerance in the face of insults. This is regardless of person or circumstance. We remember that we can handle the shocks and tragedies of life with a centered mind. Number 5 is honesty, or arjava, a sincerity which includes uprightness and straightforwardness. Number 6 is dedication or honoring of teachers and wisdom, which is akarya basana, kindness and respectful service to the spiritual teacher for the sake of learning from him or her. Number 7 is purity, or salsa, means purity both internal and external. Number 8 is steadfastness, or steria, steadfastness on the path of righteousness by one who has accepted it. Number 9 is self-control and non-attachment to sensual pleasures, which is atma vinigraha. Control over the body and the senses, which uncontrolled hinder the realization of the Atman, or immortal soul. Number 10 is dispassion, or detachments from pleasures or pains, which is Atma vinigraha. I probably said that wrong. I'm going to say Atma vinigraha, dispassion or detachments from pleasures or pains. Renunciation of sense objects. This may be helped by acknowledging the misery of samsara, or the perpetual cycle of birth and death in material existence. This allows one to accept changes in the physical world by being centered during changes. Number 11 is letting go of ego identification, ahankara. Relinquishing false ego and identification of the physical body as the self. Avoid coloring the vision as we look at objects through the filter of our minds related to one's own likes or dislikes. When one's experience is agitated or restless by the objects or experiences in our lives, it is best eased by practicing this value of clearing the mind's biases. This is a significant inner adjustment while being in the world. Identifying with one's body, mind, intellect, a nation, an occupation or title are all related to a personal ego and all change regularly. Number 12 is understanding cycles. Dukkha dosa anudarsanam. Any sorrow that occurs when thinking about birth, death, old age, illness, or worry is only due to believing that life is not filled with natural cycles and not understanding the impermanence of life. Birth, growth, disease, decay, and death are all part of the life cycle, and the one who feels that impermanent things will not change does not understand this. Each of these experiences can bring concerns when we forget such things that are not permanent. If we do not accept the fact that things are constantly changing, we bring ourselves sorrow or suffering known as samsara. Number 13 is non-attachment, asakti. Attachment and non-attachment are linked with the mind. Each person has a role in one's life. Defining the role clearly is important. If one does not define the role, then expectations are created. We remember that each soul has an individual journey based on its own past accumulated experiences and impressions. When we forget our personal journey, which results from our past actions, we forget that people can be helpful to each other on our journeys, yet no one can walk our own journey. With an inability to get out of the joys and pleasures of one's own experience, one may demand that another person becomes fully busy with taking care of our own requirements. This delays each person's unique journey as a unique entity which is independent of another. When we demand from the world our joys and pleasures, we do not move forward. This is called attachment. It is mental or psychological. This can be to people, situations, possessions, experiences, and may be necessary for a time, but impermanent. Making sure each person's role in our life is defined and understood is for mutual benefit in the relationship. Food, clothing, people, homes, names, places all have a role. Giving others freedom gives freedom to ourselves. If this is not present, both are stuck. This is not to say each just does whatever they selfishly wish. Mutual growth to a higher purpose is best. Each individual needs to keep their own balance. A situation may not be according to one's likes. We understand that people have their own characteristics. Each person can honor the unique and individual journey for themselves and others. A non-attached approach towards others' reactions is most important here, which is honestly and respectfully shared. This includes an equipoise to relatives like one's spouse, children, and other loved ones. We remember here that each being is unique and humans are least predictable. Number 14 is not identifying with experiences. Anabhisvanga. One may think of incidents or accidents here. Incidents often have a cause that is creating the effect. Accidents need not have a cause. Like earthquakes and storms start their momentum some time ago before we see the effects. Humans can become unreasonably greedy, jealous, proud, lusty. One can react to the experience through harsh words or actions, or respond by observation. This trait allows one to remain even-minded, whether sorrow or excellence is experienced in life. Number 15 is an attitude of even-mindedness, samachitta. This means to avoid getting lost in either happiness or distress by what is known to be temporary external circumstances. This is achieved by focusing on that which is eternal and the same in all situations of the self, the higher self, by focusing on the one that is the same in all. In the changing, one can then see the unchanging, and in the impermanent, one can see the permanent. This is felt or known or understood in either desirable or undesirable objects of experience. The higher self is remembered to be the unchanging presence in all conditions. Number 16 is love or devotion. Avyabhiti Karini Bhakti. We'll call it Bhakti for short. Bhakti, love or devotion. This unwavering, undeviated, loving devotion to the Supreme Lord or higher consciousness and realizing or knowing that the same Atman or higher self is present in all living beings. Conscious awareness of such devotion that is always present and not limited to a particular time, place, object, or situation. Unless one realizes that the self, higher self, is in every conscious being, one will not find such loving experiences of life with all. Remembering that higher self, love, is love for all others as it is the higher consciousness in all. Number 17, seeking solitude. Vivekta desa sevitam. Fondness for performing austerities in solitary places. This is not running away from the world, but is a way to strengthen the union with higher consciousness. An individual who is exclusively looking to reach such union will seek solitude. This requires the exclusive time and space for such a purpose. This allows one to abide in the self, the higher self, where the union may be absorbed into oneself. A scholarly approach to the Gita is reading or learning. The love or devotion to experience the union with the higher self is only possible when a love for this goal happens for a true seeker. This is helped by creating a time and space for this very personal communication. Number 18, disinterest in superficial company and discussion. Aratir Jana Samsad. Excuse that Sanskrit pronunciation. We'll again say disinterest in superficial company and discussion. Indifference to mundane topics and mundane association. Does not consciously seek company with others, as is delightfully satisfied with own company. Joy is neither added nor reduced in the company of others. This is the delight of understanding the eternal presence of the higher self or soul. Number 19, knowing the source or higher self. Adhyatma Jnana Nityavam. Knowing the source or self is always interested in spiritual knowledge and self-realization. There are 3 experiences that can bring us unease in life. Some can be in times of experiences out of our control, like storms, earthquakes, tsunamis, etc. Those are natural or divine causes. Some unease is created by other living beings that may create disturbances like wars, government policies or politics, business or personal relationships, sometimes by wild animals and any other people in daily interaction. The third cause of unease can be from the creation in our own minds, from expectations, disappointments, jealousy, anger, greed, fear, etc. These are created from the ego in ourselves. The knowledge of the higher self, which is the source from which the mind operates, helps us with the third cause best. Knowledge of the higher self allows a peaceful meeting of each and every calamity and sorrow that one may face in life with understanding. Understanding the immortal nature of the higher self brings an inner strength, both physically and psychologically. The realization of the immortal self is what is called liberation or moksha. This is the constancy of self-knowledge that one is eternal and never ceases to exist. Number 20 is vision of union, Atma Tattva. Knowledge of the immortal soul within. We can learn the Sanskrit term darshanam, a philosophy that helps one see the truth. This seeing is through understanding. This is a view of life that transforms one in such a way that one looks at the world the way the Lord or higher consciousness looks at it. To understand the Gita, the entire perspective can be seen from the perspective of higher consciousness. We can accept the view of only an authority that we fully trust. Remember that Arjuna came to fight a war in the Gita, as well as many others who came for the same intention. Only Arjuna did not want to fight, as he felt there was a different way things could be solved. Krishna let Arjuna know that he could transform the experience as a spiritual journey. This is the purpose of Arjuna's experience that is based on the transformation of his thinking. This is the ultimate purpose, to fully live life as one uses knowledge gained to change one's perception of life. Such knowledge that can be gained from ancient wisdom and actually experienced by understanding the relevance of these 20 values in one's own life and applying them to one's life. Any actions that are opposite to those listed as values is strengthening ignorance. This includes then pride, pretentiousness, injuring others, being unforgiving, non-sincerity, not serving teachers, absence of purity, not having steadfastness, not having self-control, having a fascination for sense objects, egoism, not seeing the cycle of birth to death, attachment, having a strong identification with objects or people, not being even-minded, losing balance with desirable or undesirable things, no devotion to the Lord or higher consciousness, not being able to sit peacefully in solitude by constantly seeking company, not having knowledge of self, not changing perception for good by understanding the purpose of life. The law of karma is reminded here. Every action creates a result.